Hello. Right, I'm going to go with the idea that I've had for the last couple of days and push this once more. So I'm returning to John Michael Greer, the Archdruid report, and taking 3 more paragraphs from that article, one which we've read already, and see how we go. But I've kept it down to the minimum because the size of the concept that it throws up is so big, so I've tried to keep the information down as much as possible, and we'll see how we go. That was what drove the globalization fad of the 1990s after all, and again, don't worry about that, we've probably covered it. Another round of arbitrage, in which huge profits were reaped off the difference between labour costs in industrial and non-industrial countries. That we can easily understand. That was the globalisation, especially in the 90s. There was cheap oil that could sail the ships around and pick up and exploit the cheaper labour in the Eastern Asian markets and ship it to the rich West. Very few people seem to have noticed that globalization involved a radical reversal of the movement towards greater automation. That is, the use of fossil energy to replace human labour. When the cost of hiring a sweatshop labourer became less than the cost of paying for an equivalent amount of productive capacity in mechanical form, the arbitrage shifted into reverse. Only the steep differentials in wage costs between the Third World and the industrial nations, and the vast amount of very cheap transport fuel, made it possible for the arbitrage to continue. So what we had yesterday, and we're going to touch on again, Industrial Revolution, the mechanical labourers working with their own hands were displaced by cheap energy, in that time coal. But what has come on now is that the cheap energy has been used to go to the east and use cheap manual labour again. It is a kind of a turning back on itself of the what would have been the normal motion of the system, which would be to use more and more automation and using more and more carbon fuels to make more productivity and efficiency. But it was found, and this is again the Adam Smith millions, trillions of different actions, it was found that more arbitrage opportunities were to be found going over to the east and using manual labour again. Right, so okay, I'll read this and see how we go. What sets industrialism apart from other arbitrage schemes was that it arbitraged the price difference between different forms of energy. This is where we were yesterday, it's a repeat. Concentrated heat energy in the form of burning fossil fuel was cheap. Mechanical energy in the form of complex movements performed by the hands of the spinners and weavers was expensive. It's a repeat, but I know I'm going somewhere. The steam engine and the machines it powered, such as the spinning jenny and the power loom, turned concentrated heat into mechanical energy and opened the door to what must have been the most profitable arbitrage operation of all time. The gargantuan profits yielded by this scheme provided the start-up capital for further rounds of industrialization, and thus made possible the immense economic transformations of the industrial age. And we touched yesterday on the fact that the titans of industry amassed fortunes out of this arbitrage opportunity of the decade, of the century. Okay. What I repeated this for was to show that the cheap fossil fuel energy displaced the hand and brains of the hand loomers at home. we could imagine, and I've touched on this in the couple of times that I've had a go at the idea of wealth, that the information of how to do hand weaving at home and the hand weaving machinery, rudimentary that it was at home, those small machines that they had at home could have been considered wealth. But that wealth was rendered null and void and zeroed by other actions by the industrialists using coal and spinning jennies. Right. The thing I'm trying to put across here is that the system, the great big macro overall system that involves all of us, and especially this thing called money, has got bugger all to do with what we have imagined, or what I've had a go at a couple of times, as wealth. The money is normally described as a unit of exchange, a unit of account, and a unit of savings. What do they call it? There's a better way of saying it. I'll call it a unit of savings. It's not a unit of savings. It never has been, and it never will be. It's a unit of account and a unit of exchange. But even that, we've got to understand, is totally subservient to this system. We get the idea now that money and wealth and that is some big thing that is. But this is the big thing that is. It's the fact that cheap energy can come along, and Arkwright and his ideas can get things in such a position that the generations of wealth, of knowledge of how to do hand weaving and the wooden looms at home were completely discarded by the new ideas. The system is exploitation of these arbitrage opportunities, of these bankable projects, and that is all. And money is a scorekeeping, just a scorekeeper for it, and the money is used in as a unit of exchange to build up these arbitrage opportunities, to pay for a factory, to pay people for this. But the money is totally subservient to the system. The system is the fact that there are arbitrage opportunities and bankable projects out there. And that is what the system, let's say, was. The Great Industrial Revolution system. And the Industrial Revolution has worked for us because by accident the coal led to oil. I'll keep it simple. Coal led to oil. And the arbitrage opportunities and the bankable projects were so numerous, and the arbitrage opportunities so great, that so much money was made that ultimately it benefited everyone. But it was never meant to happen that way. The whole system is only there to look for, find and exploit these bankable opportunities, these arbitrage projects. There's a mismatch there's a mix between the two. And money is just the unit of exchange, the oil in that system, and that is the system. And it is not thinking of people, society, or even the things that are made. It's of no use at all. It just so happens that the system has profited everyone, but it was really only, even if it, I don't know if it was even meant to work that way, it just by accident worked that way at the Industrial Revolution time, that the British banking system was able to bankroll this industrial way of doing things. And the accounting, the coinage, the scoring, because the banks were mature in Britain at the time, could develop this system more and more, and eventually it would go around the world. But it's for no other reason except for this arbitrage project opportunity thing. And it's not meant to take care of the populations. It does make people rich, but it's not even meant to make people rich. All it is just the way it happened to be. And that's where we are now. So I'll go on to the last paragraph. I have begun to suspect that this will turn out to be one of the most crucial downsides of the arrival of peak oil. This is the last paragraph in John Michael Greer's article. If the industrial economy, as I've suggested, was basically an arbitrage scheme profiting off the difference in cost between energy from fossil fuels and energy from human labours, the rising cost of fossil fuels and other inputs needed to run an industrial economy will sooner or later collide with the declining cost of labour in an impoverished and overcrowded society. As we get closer to that point, it seems to me that we may begin to see the entire industrial project unravel, as the profits needed to make industrialism make sense dry up. If that's the unspoken subtext behind the widening spiral of economic dysfunction that seems to be gripping so much of the industrial world today, then we've seen so far of what peak oil looks like may be a prologue to a series of wrenching economic transformations that leave few lives untouched. Now, yesterday I had the idea that when the price of oil goes, let's say, to $400 a barrel, there will be more arbitrage opportunities there because of the price of oil being excessive. When you get excessive somethings, there will be arbitrage opportunities, and there will be profits. Now, here in the middle of this paragraph, as we get closer to that point, it seems to me that we may begin to see the entire industrial project unravel as the profits needed to make industrialism make sense dry up. And that is where we're at. Profits are absolutely essential to make industrialism make sense. Without profits, the whole game that has grown up by accident doesn't make sense anymore. There must be profits for the industrialist, the entrepreneur, the capitalist. For the intermediary banks, nobody else counts. The people are of absolutely no interest in this game at all. It's not played for them, by them. It's got nothing to do with them at all. It is purely for the industrial capitalist and the bankers. Now, that's not good or bad, but it just means that it was completely by accident that the last 2 centuries have also been profitable, raising the standard of living for the people of the world in general. Very sweeping that, but I think it's true. But it's totally and utterly by accident, and it's by dint of the industrialists and the bankers together finding profitable projects. If in any sort of future those projects are not findable and there are no profits, there is nothing to share around. Obviously the industrialists and the bankers share the profits first, but when they're too excessive, there is trickle down to the rest of the population. If profits dry up, there will be no trickle down to the rest of the population. The bankers will, their profits dry up and their businesses go out of business, and the industrialists the same. There must be profits. There must be profits. And this is kind of where we are now. This is what we're seeing. The squeeze on the people who were never part of the system, but you can imagine as the profits dry up because the arbitrage opportunities have shrunk, the people are not getting their share. The bankers now are not getting their share. They're getting much more than the people, of course, because they're part of the game. They are, if there are players in the game, there are two, the industrialists and the bankers, they're still getting some of their share, but that's starting to shrink. And those FT bank loans from the European banks, but it's the same in America that I showed, all this money is out, and it's quite evident now that it's been mislent, and they are going to get shrunk, and the industrialists are going to get shrunk as well. The 1% are going to get shrunk just like the 99% are being shrunk, unless profits can be found. Now, I'd say that all I've said so far is nothing really except a repeat of what even Occupy Wall Street people say. But I would think that there is a chance, because the way the system is constructed, if the price of oil goes to $400 a barrel, there will be more profits to be made. And there's a chance that then, because of these profits being made, that they will be enough to generate enough profits to pay for the industrialists and the bankers, the 1%, and there could be trickle down again for the 99%. But at the moment, we're at this horrible peak at the top where too many things have been leveled out by the price of oil, and the profits are just not out there to share among the players. That's it.